Okay, so I'll go ahead and hit record. So welcome to the Educator Spotlight Series. Today's guests, I have Carissa Chapman, Jessica Koziara, I think I got it right this time, and Wade Zeilenga from Byron Center High School. And they're all the high school counselors at Byron Center. Like I said, if you haven't done so already, please mute your microphone. Later when we get to the Q&A session, I am all about you unmuting yourself if you want to ask questions that way, or if you'd rather go ahead and type it in to the chat box, and that works for me as well. Just to reiterate, for those, if you've never come to this before, our goal for today's session is to help yourselves as educators to share best practices for integrating career readiness into instruction in meaningful and practical ways. If you've ever done any sessions, and I know Carissa and Jessica have come to a lot of my sessions, they hear me preach it over and over again. I'm very, very big on, we hear rigor and relevance a lot in schools. And I really, truly, truly believe, having been a classroom teacher, having worked in higher ed, having worked out in industry, what really kids need is that combination of rigor and relevance. It's not just rigor. And too often we hear a lot about the rigor and not about the relevance part. And so what are some of the things that educators are doing, whether you're a counselor, you're an administrator, you're a classroom teacher, what are some of the things that are being done that you can just pick up? Because as a former classroom teacher, I always learned very early on, the phrase was like beg, borrow, and steal. If you can find other things that other people are doing that is great, why wouldn't you want to pick up on some of that? If I haven't introduced myself, my name is Eric Kelleher. I am a career readiness consultant with Kent ISD. As several people mentioned in the chat, we have people from all over the state, from Detroit to Imlay City to Petoskey to Eaton Rapids, all over. So welcome. This session is for you. So please, please, please ask questions via the chat feature. When I say that it's open for questions and you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, by all means, go ahead and do that, because this session really is for you. And yes, I do recognize that you're getting sketches for it, but my hope, and I do check out the surveys at the end, and a couple people have actually sent me the surveys. I actually enjoy these, even if I didn't get the sketch. When I hear that, that's music to my ears, because that means you're getting something relevant from it. So I am recording this session just as a reminder, but for the most part, I have it set where it is, and if I haven't done that, I need to make sure I do that, where it's going to screen the bigger part of the screen. So I think I do need to change that. So I'm going to have to make sure I change to the correct setting in just a second here. So next thing, session norms. Please mute your mic if you haven't done so already, but do share your voice, whether it's out loud or using the chat feature. Please raise your hand, use the chat, ask lots of questions. In short, I would really like it that if this is an active participation. I do recognize that in your roles, some of you are having to multitask, and I get that. But I really would love as much active participation as possible. Please keep your screen on if you can, and I recognize that everybody can keep your screen on when possible. It really helps for the participants to put faces to names. And if you haven't done so, and I see we're getting better and better at that, please rename yourself to whatever your first and last name is that you registered under, just so I can track. Because I kind of made the joke all last week that if your screen name is Hot Mama, that's great, but I don't know who Hot Mama is. So put it as a name so that I can track, so that when I'm going back to make sure you get credit, there's nobody registered under our PD Hub as Hot Mama, then you're the sketch for that. And I'm just making fun of that name. So I just like saying Hot Mama, I guess. All right, so welcome to our session, and welcome Carissa, Jessica, and Wade. I'm gonna go ahead and stop screen sharing. And I'm going to change the view here so that we can get the speaker view. But welcome, Carissa and Wade and Jessica. Why don't you just go ahead and quickly and introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Eric. I'm Carissa. I started out as an English teacher for several years and then got my degree in school counseling. And this is my 18th year at Byron Center High School.
I am Jessica. I have done some private and family counseling prior to this, and I've been a school counselor for 10 years now.
Cool.
My name is Wade, and I also have been a school counselor for, I believe it's 18 years, and happy to be part of Byron Center High School. Previously, I also taught high school English.
Okay, we have a couple of English teachers. I was a former English teacher. Not a great one, but I was an English teacher. So for all of our guests here, today's session, I specifically had been mentioning, I was looking to find some school counselors. I know not everybody that attends these is a counselor, but it seems like this year particularly, just due to scheduling, we do have a majority of school counselors, because little bit more flexibility in the schedule. That I guess that probably is open to debate, but a little bit of flexibility in the fact that you can maybe make a session like this. So what I wanted to talk to our Byron Center high school educators about, and a lot of you who have been attending our Educators in Industry already have a little bit of idea, but it looks a lot different when we're face to face. Byron Center counselors, would you tell us a little bit about a program that I did with you a couple of summers ago, just before school started, a Teachers in Industry, which I've now changed to Educators in Industry because I want to be representative of the fact that there's a lot more than just teachers who go to that. It's the administrators and the counselors. Tell us a little bit about that and what that looked like when it was a face-to-face experience and what that was like for you with a full staff.
I can start. It sort of started even before that event. Several of us had attended some of the then Teachers in Industry, where we got to go into business places with other teachers and counselors. And it was such a valuable experience to hear their feedback for us as educators. And when we were doing some of the wrap up, Eric said that he had taken whole staffs to these for professional development. We thought, wow, what a cool experience to get every teacher and counselor in our building into the world of work, because we can get kind of isolated sometimes. And so we worked with Eric and he helped us find 3 different local businesses in our area. I can just briefly mention where we went. We went to a food distribution called Spartan Nash. We went to a construction supply company. And then we also went to Beist Electric, which are all probably within 5 to 10 miles of our high school. And Eric divided up 3 groups, and our whole teaching staff and administrators and counselors all traveled to these different events.
All right. So for Jessica or Wade, I'm gonna take what Chris has said and kind of put you on the spot. Jessica, you've come to several of the Teachers in Industry when it was individual, anybody could sign up across the county. Carissa said it was a really valuable experience. So she said it, but I'm going to ask you, what did you find that was valuable about the experience that you thought we really got to get our whole staff out there?
I think so often each of us has a little bit of the information, and then we're trying to figure out ways to give it to each other, and to have everybody in one place getting the same information and to be able to come back together and talk about a plan of how to give that to our students was so important. And it's not just us as counselors or teachers or administrators trying to implement something, it's everybody thinking it's important. Mm-hmm. And I think that was so valuable because sometimes we might have a great idea, right? But we're just 3 people. And sometimes, administrators, you all know, are so busy, and teachers are so busy, and counselors are so busy, but to have everybody have one common goal, I think is so unique, but so valuable. So to get everybody on that same train and moving in one direction was really cool. And so I think we came out with some things that were really beneficial for our kids.
Cool. Wade, what about, and we'll talk about the second half of the day a little bit, but the first half of the day, we went out to these different employers and we just did that in the morning. And to be completely honest, for everybody else, I've done this several times. Sometimes I've done it in just a half day, that's all I had, or a shortened early release day. Other times it's been a full day. We went to 3 different employers and the whole day was spent around that. And we did something very different with you guys that I've been trying to do a little bit more. But as far as hearing the buzz from the teachers specifically, being the fact that your job is to do your own things, but also to collaborate with the teachers to come up with programming and things like that. What were some of the things you heard from the teachers from that day?
Yeah, very relevant, very hands-on. I'll be honest with you, if you ask me, hey, what did we do 3 years ago for in-service before school started? I probably what we've always done. But everyone could say, oh yeah, that one year when we went to the businesses, it's a lot more experiential, more hands-on. So I guess I'd say it's memorable. And then there's always that application, even a Spartan Nash, which, okay, is a grocery distributor. What does that mean? They had careers across the spectrum. So no matter what your subject matter is, here's how a math teacher is going to apply this, an English teacher, history, science, all your core, all your electives. I think they found it very experiential and applicable. Applicable, that's a word.
Yeah, it's good. All right, Carissa, Jessica, anything you want to add in terms of what you either heard from the teachers or your experiences going out there? I love what Wade said, but what could we add to that?
Yeah, I would just piggyback like Wade said. It's something that our teachers still talk about, just they can come up with just examples from that, or things employers said specifically, like, no, I can, when they want to prove a point to a kid, like, no, this really is relevant and here's why, and I've had this conversation. So I think it helps bring that real life experience and even more to the classroom. So
Great.
I can recall I attended the Spartan Nash, and we were in with an HR director who was talking about hiring, and teachers' eyes just lit up as she was talking about the resumes that are coming in might be different from the ones we wrote many moons ago when we were applying for an education job, and they were very skills based. And watching teachers be like, that's what we're telling them, like, to realize that we are in this together. I think it was very encouraging for teachers, and to have employers saying, yeah, what you are doing is so important, and here's the things we're looking for from your students as they graduate, was encouraging for both sides, and also just reinforce some of those, I guess, employability skills that we're really trying to teach within our classrooms also.
Awesome. You know, it's funny. I've also had enough teachers and counselors over the years who've come to these who admit when they come and they hear from employers talking about resumes saying, I've been in the same job for 25 years. I haven't updated my resume all that time. So here I'm, as an English teacher, supposed to be teaching resumes. How am I going to do that if I don't even know it myself, right? So to hear from these other people who are on the field, and let's face it, in a lot of jobs today, the average, I don't remember this exact number, but what I hear is the average person will probably change jobs 10 to 12 times in their lifetime easily, sometimes even multiple times in multiple career paths, completely different ones. That's not uncommon now. And so having an updated resume looks very, very different from the teacher who's been doing the same thing for 20 years. So just to get a little bit of a fresh perspective for themselves to be able to get the information. But I have said many times too, like you said, Carissa, when a teacher is doing something and then a student's not buying it because it's teacher, or I also call teachers second mom or dad, right? When it's second mom or dad saying it, it doesn't mean anything. But then all of a sudden you bring an employer in who is seconding and echoing what you're saying. They're like, oh, wow, I really need to do this now, right? So it's just adding some credibility to things that you already say, even though what you're saying is valid from the beginning. All right, so we did that for a full day experience with that, and I know a couple of you have come to several of the events with people across the county. And by the way, whether or not you are in Kent County, you are always welcome. I recognize that it's not easy for people from Imlay City to come down to Educators in Industry, even when we are face-to-face, or from Petoskey. But just recognize that we've had people from Muskegon County, from Montcalm County. Like, we've had people, actually somebody from Traverse City came down to an event. So you are always welcome. You don't have to just be in Kent County. That said, I recognize the difficulty, which is why I got some feedback, and some people said, oh, I'd still love to see these opportunities, these Educators in Industry, even the virtual ones, going forward. And you got a chance to hear from employers. So let's back up a little bit. So we did that for the first part of the day. And sometimes when I've done these face-to-face, I try to pack you in going to 3 different locations, and it becomes a full day experience. One of the struggles that I had found in doing this was, it was this great experience, and then teachers come back like, oh, that was great. But then the struggle is always, okay, now what? And so I really wanted us to end that day with a now what? So I don't care who it is, but would somebody be willing to share a little bit about the second half of the day after lunch? And by the way, just so you know, their building was under construction. It was supposed to be ready to go and opening. It was opening a rebuilding of a good chunk of their building was being reopened, and they were literally doing construction while we're doing this whole day. So it was kind of a hot mess, but we got through it.
An actual hot mess. Yeah.
It really was. Yes. So explain a little bit about what we did that second half of the day.
So Eric brought our whole staff through several exercises that were really helpful. And I believe the activity was creating the profile of a career-ready graduate. So in a lot of different small groups, he would give us topics such as, what should a career-ready graduate know? And then in small groups, we would identify, okay, this is what we think is most important. And it was cool for me to walk around and listen to the different groups, and they were very engaged and talking through things. And after that, we had what should a career-ready graduate have done before they graduate from Byron Center High School? And then what type of artifact should that career-ready graduate be able to produce before they graduate? So each of those topics was covered in groups, and then each group would report out. And so that was a big part of our afternoon. And then we kind of synthesized those into, okay, these are the things that we want Byron Center graduates to be skilled in as they walk across our stage.
Before I go on, Wade or Jessica, is there anything you wanted to add to that, or did that sum it up well? Or
Yeah, I think that's a great summary. And just, I would add that those are still conversations that we have, and that's still vocabulary that we're using. So I think it's not things that are going away. You know, it still remains relevant for our staff, and people are still having those conversations. So that's been helpful.
Yeah, I agree.
I will say, I remember getting an email like the day school started, the day after school started, from their principal. I'm like, how did things go today for the first day? And one of the cool things was he emailed me back saying, hey, I was walking through the hallway and I heard several teachers telling their kids, hey, we went to this business yesterday, we did this and this. So the teachers were right away just diving in with their kids and talking about some of the experiences they had to try to get their kids excited about it. And it would also piggyback on what Wade said. Think back to when you were in school. And for some of you like me, it was a long time ago. But when you were back to school, I say all this about when it comes to education, we get shoved a lot of it, or I say our kids get shoved a lot of information in their heads over the course of 13 years, right? A ton of information. The reality is only a small percentage of that ever sticks. It's just not feasible or possible. But I could bet all of you have experiences through your K through 12 experience, a couple of them that stand out. And what is about those experiences that stand out? So whether it be just like that with students, I feel like it's interesting that Wade had said, a couple years ago, I couldn't tell you what a PD was to open school because it all runs together. But when you do something different like that, we have a shared experience. I think there's a little bit of merit with that. I want to share really quickly. Carissa had mentioned that we did this profile of a career-ready graduate. Is my screen sharing right now or no?
Yep.
So you can see this, and this is what they came up with. What we did to piggyback off of what Carissa talked about, I asked them to break into groups, and we did what should a career-ready graduate know? What should they have done? What experiences should they have? And what types of artifacts? Or again, for a lot of you, if you were secondary ed, they're supposed to walk away. According to Michigan Career Developmental, kids are supposed to have a portfolio of some sort. And the fact about the matter is I know that district to district, we're all over the board in terms of to what fidelity we're doing that with. And that's not a judgment call. It's lower down the priority scale, but it's supposed to be done. So we say, okay, you're supposed to be walking away with these things. And I heard this a couple of years back, and it just really stuck out to me. If we're supposed to be graduating kids who are supposed to be ready for either college or a career, and I feel like those are kind of one and the same, because if they're ready for a career, if they're ready for college, and we're hoping that we're getting ready for a career, they're having those employability skills Chris was talking about. But the fact is, I know that that's not happening, because I talk to employers all the time who said they are interviewing high school or college graduates who are not ready for a career. So what is it that we're lacking? And I think sometimes we don't start with the end in mind. If any of you are familiar with the whole backwards design thinking process, you start with the end in mind and you work backwards. If we're saying by the time they're done with our school, and I know that we have people on here who are middle school, and we even have elementary people on here, this is where the next step, when we didn't even do this with Byron Center, and that somewhere down the road, I would like to see, okay, we did this with the high school, now let's meet with the middle school, and let's meet with the elementary school, because we say they need to be done with this by the time they're done with high school, but what does it look like that they should be doing in the middle school in order to have them ready for high school? We do this, we talk about cross grades and cross platforms. You do that with your subject area content, right? I know at least years ago when I was in the classroom, as a language arts teacher, you were supposed to meet with the middle school people, and you're supposed to be working with different grade bands so that you can make sure that you're in uniform and you're teaching a process all the way through. But are we doing that when it comes to career readiness? Because I just talked to a teacher today, and they do a capstone project. It was fantastic. But if you do a capstone project in the last semester of your senior year and you're cramming it all in, you've missed an opportunity. It's too late. What are we doing in elementary school to prep them for middle school, and in middle school so they have some exploration opportunities and experiences that they can build on in high school? But what I liked about that is they came up with their own top 10. So we did this activity and we kind of had several groups doing it. And eventually we broke it down into, okay, let's synthesize that. So I see your list here real quick, and I've only got a couple more minutes, but I see you came up with a list. And I see self-awareness, personal accountability, problem solving, literacy, several things on that list. To the three of you, I recognize COVID kind of got in the way. This happened last year, by the way, last school year. So COVID got in the way. What are you hoping to do with this going forward? And I mean, like, it's a great experience. Now what? What do you do with this?
So I'm glad you asked. Where we left off before all of our worlds changed a lot last spring was we put out feelers to the whole staff saying who is passionate about this area, who would want to serve on a career committee. And we got about 10 teachers who volunteered that said, this is something I'm really interested in. We want to take this list of the Byron Center top 10 ideas and figure out how we can implement them, not just in that senior year, but throughout curriculum and throughout activities that go on in the high school. So our hope is that next year, and even before we end this year, we'll be able to get that committee going again to really do the work of implementing our plans.
Yeah, I mean, in reality too, you guys, just like you all know, this year has been a very difficult year and you're just surviving. But looking ahead, that's, I think, the direction that, most of our schools should be doing. So knowing that we have just a few minutes left, I will circle back at the end here with how to get the sketches and upcoming events. But what questions do you have, participants who are paying attention and following along today? Do you have any questions of Wade and Jessica and Carissa? And you can go ahead and put them in the chat, or you can unmute. And I hate awkward pauses and awkward silence, but I'm going to try to pause for a couple of seconds. And if somebody's typing, that's fantastic. In the meantime, like I said, I hate the pauses or silences. So you've got a plan for next year. While I'm hoping that we're getting something in there, we've got a plan for next year. Where would you like to start first, just out of curiosity? Let me back up. I love that you went and got a committee. One thing that I have found, and I'm sure a lot of our guests here would probably agree with, the last thing we need is people being forced to do something, right? I love that you reached out to ask people who wants to be a part of this. I feel like you will find a lot more success when you get people volunteering to be champions. But go ahead and answer that question. Like, what would you say is the next step after you pull your committee together? And then there's a question here from Sarah.
So what we have found is that there are pockets of teaching going on in so many of these different areas. So maybe econ is teaching literacy skills. Maybe personal finance is teaching literacy skills. Maybe English classes are having oral communication skills practice. But we want to make sure that all students are getting exposure and practice on all the skills. So a lot of it will probably, Wade has done a great job of surveying teachers to see what they're currently doing with career awareness and bringing that together, and then finding out where our gaps are will probably be a big part of the starting steps.
That's terrific. Kudos to you guys for thinking about that too, how to find the gaps. I want to make sure, Sarah asked a question, does your committee include high school members only, or are you looking to include other grade levels at some point?
That's a great question. So right now we just have high schoolers or high school members, but I think kind of once we get our act together, what we would love, kind of like what Carissa said Wade did with the scope and sequence, is just, doing that K-12. And what we would love to have is some common language about employability skills, so that students at the elementary level are still learning, like, at their developmentally appropriate level, what are employability skills? What is, it means to be on time and all of those things, so that we can build on that every year, so that when they get to high school, it's not the first time that they're hearing about those things.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great call out.
Yeah, much the work to do. I think everyone's busy with their own subject matter and lives in their own, their own neck of the woods, I guess. But when I did the scope and sequence, I was surprised at teachers are already doing this. They're already talking about how things are going. And they're also repeating themselves. So when you asked about middle school, it's certainly right now it's grassroots. There's nothing official to tap into the middle or elementary, but I have to believe they're already doing it as well. So it'd be good to get everybody on the same page.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing too. I feel like when we do these sessions, some people are hesitant to be participants on this Educator Spotlight series, and because they're like, well, I'm not doing anything significant. And my response always is, but you are. And maybe it's not anything earth-shattering, or maybe it's not something that others aren't doing. But I do feel like there are some that are doing things a little bit better, or maybe they just have a different spin on it, right? To hear different people's perspectives is really helpful. I would venture to say you're right, Wade, that several of the middle school teachers are doing it, but how do we help communicate with them so that it becomes more systematic? For anybody who was able to join one of the last Educator Spotlight series, we actually had a middle school team, a teacher, an 8th grade teacher at Lowell Middle School, and as a team project, they had their kids do a research paper. So, I mean, how do we take that and build off of that once we talk to them, at the middle school level, which is great. Also, I want to mention, Angela brought up a great point. She says, I don't have a question, but I find value in the statement that the experience created a team effort and everybody was able to get the same information or experience, and yet have a different perspective. One thing that's really cool about that is because we didn't have enough time to go to all the businesses, we broke up into 3 groups, but every team got 2 experiences, which means each team got an experience that somebody else didn't, right? So that was kind of cool. And they could come back and talk about, I went to such and such building and this building, but they didn't hear from this other one. So then now they're like, oh, tell me a little bit more about that one. And at the same time, the experience in general was common. So, but they're looking for like, oh, I wish I'd have heard that one. I remember specifically people who did not, which I did not go to BICE. Everyone was like, oh man, I wish I went to BICE because I heard it was so good. So, all right, and if there's final questions, please go ahead and throw them up in the on the chat. I do want to make sure sensitive to time, so I'm going to go back to sharing my screen, and so that I can quickly finish out the PowerPoint here with everybody. Oops, I got to close that out. There we go. And make sure I have going for the whole screen here. All right, is my slides back up again? All right, fantastic. So again, just wanted to mention we have a couple more of these, actually one more of this event this school year. So May 10th, we have Catherine Van Overen, who is a high school counselor over at East Kentwood, and Dominic Lowe is their freshman campus principal. They're going to come and talk next month on May 10th. So we have another counselor coming out. We have one more Educators in Industry. So essentially what this virtual Educators in Industry is a virtual version of what we've done in the past face-to-face. The difference being, it's so much better when you get a chance to go there and see what their facilities look like, and get to ask and talk to multiple people, especially in some of the places like manufacturing where there's a lot happening and going on. But this is at least kind of our chance to get a little bit of that with the virtual version. That's May 10th with Hope Network. On May 6th is our final session of the Career Readiness Network. I know several of you have signed up and are participating in that. So we have our last session of that on May 6th. That is also for SCECHs. And if you haven't done so yet, we did talk about it at the Career Readiness Network, but if you haven't checked it out yet, please check out the ISD's career staircase, or our career framework that we've put together. We're looking for feedback. We want to hear what's working, what you like about it, what you don't. Even if you're not in Kent County or you're not a Kent County educator, we'd still love for you to check it out and give us some feedback. And I can go ahead and post that in the chat here when we're done. This is something that's really important. I really could use your help. And some of you already filled it out who attends the Educators in Industry. I know that there's a survey in just a moment you have to fill out in order to get the sketch. This is not a requirement, but I'm really asking for people to give me feedback. I want to hear from you about this. This was a brand new program. I was telling Wade and Chris and Jessica that this is new, and I was hoping for hundreds and hundreds, and if I get 10 or 12, I'm really excited about that. Sometimes I wonder, is this effective? But that's why I'm looking for your feedback. What do you like about this session? What would you change? Should I continue doing it? My hope is that you're finding some value just to hear from different people and different perspectives. But if you're saying, honestly, Eric, no offense, I'm doing it for the sketches, it's not meaning very much, then I'd rather hear that, right? Or maybe there's something about that you say, hey, if you could only do this, that would really be helpful for me. So there's a survey at the bottom. It's bit.ly/ESS year-end feedback 2021. And I'll put that in the chat because that's a mouthful, but bit.ly or bit.ly/ESS year-end feedback 2021. If you can give me some survey feedback, I'd really appreciate it. In order to get sketches for today's session, you need to go to bit.ly/ESS Educator Spotlight Series -sketch. And the 6-digit code you need for that is 792-586. That's 792-586. And if you give me just a second, I'll throw that in the chat for those who didn't get that. Again, our website is crewreadiness.kensda.org. Our framework is one of the links, right? If you go to that page, like right at the top, there'll be a link to our framework. My email address is up here if you have any questions and want to follow up.